Welcome to More to Explore. My name is Right. You are here to the students, the future students of the College of Global Futures. We're going to go through a couple of things and then get to our main attraction, Mr. Garrett Wong here. Here in the College of Global Futures, I'm going to be your host today. I'm Colin Tatro. I am a recruiter. I also do faculty work here for the school in the college. My primary focus is on corporate sustainability, but also, since we're hosting this, I'm actually a global sports scholar for Arizona State University. What that means, I don't know, because it's surely not my athletic prowess. This front of you is not a sports star himself, but I say and think about some interesting things in the sports world. That's me. We've got our awesome alumnus guest, Garrett Wong, and then we're going to have some Q&A to wrap us all up. So let's frame this quickly, why global futures, right? So what is a global future? Why do we do this? Here's a quick value proposition for you guys to think about before we jump into the sports, is that typically, on average, only 1 in 4 people, 25%, it's on the high end, actually, when you get a degree in something, actually ending up using it in an actual field of application. So in the College of Global Futures, that's upwards of 75%. So if you study this stuff, guess what? You're going to apply. Garrett's going to be able to walk you through his journey, right? From a genesis here, coming from the Stanford area down to Phoenix, now back up to Portland. Transdisciplinarity. So again, Garrett's going to highlight this as I think a keystone, right? This transdisciplinarity, we work across the verticals here. You're not siloed into one individual thing. So by actually working across sectors and seeing the big picture, it allows you to activate and create more change. How about solving complex problems? So the real world is actually a very sticky, complex ball of yarn. These complex issues, you have to have the ability to not only understand their complexity, but honestly embrace it. Not to distill it down to a reductionist mindset, but embrace the complexity, because in that complexity, you can actually find interesting and impactful solutions. And then one of the great things that we actually build into our overall curriculum, no matter what you do, is real world application. You cannot graduate from this college without doing things like internships and capstone workshops. These are classes and experiences that take you out of tests, take you out of papers, and require that you do stuff in the real world. Because to be a change agent, right, we fundamentally think you have to understand the problems. You have to find solutions, but you have to actually do this stuff. Well, happy to have you here today. We're just getting started. Here's some things, right? Let's talk about the outcomes first. Jobs, right? What do you do with a degree from the College of Global Futures, be it in sustainability, innovation, or a future degree, which is going to be complex adaptive systems? You can work at any of these organizations. And guess what? They want people that understand how to solve problems, understand the transdisciplinarity, and people who have experience before they graduate. Don't take our word for it and this shameless huckster in front of you. I want you to understand that the School of Sustainability, School for the Future of Innovation, and the School for Complex Adaptive Systems, which comprise the College of Global Futures, we are all in. ASU as a whole has been graded recently against what we call the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are really the top line global ambitions that, hey, if we solve one of these things, oh my gosh, the world's going to be a much better place. We solve all 16 of these, 17 being synthesis, the world's going to be looking really fantastic. Well, recently, we were voted number 5 in the entire world in terms of achieving all of these goals. As it pertains to American universities, there were only three that even cracked the top 100. Guess what? ASU was number 1 in the entire United States and number 5 in the entire world. So when you want to go to a place that is thinking about innovation and sustainability in a complex manner, in an outcomes-focused manner, and is putting all of its chips into the center of the table, there's no better place in the entire United States and 5th in the world than right here of being a Sun Devil. What do we talk about in some of these things? We talk about cities, energy, water, food supply. Under our School of Sustainability, we've actually got a comprehensive food systems degree, which is really incredible. Yes, we talk about climate change. We talk about things like societal and social transformations. That's a big component of the School for the Future of Innovation in Society. How are we as societies going to grapple with that? And then honestly, planning for the future through things like sustainable development. There's going to be 9.6 billion people, current trajectories by 2050. How the heck are we going to handle that? So here in the College of Global Futures, This is the big pie chart, or rather the big chart about degrees. So you see on your left here, that's the School of Sustainability. We have a Bachelor of Science, Arts, Sustainable Food Systems. We've actually got some really interesting energy certificates and food system certificates as well. In the center of your screen, you've got the School for the Future of Innovation in Society. So Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, and we've got concentrations in those as well. What you're going to notice between sustainability and innovation, some of these things are connected, right? So if you're interested in things like public policy, if you want to dive into the laws and the regulations, you can do that across all those spectrums. Both of those two schools, sustainability and innovation, have really fascinating 4+1 programs, which means you have the ability in 5 years, not 6, in 5 years, you get a bachelor's degree and a master's. So it's an accelerated bachelor's and master's degree, really neat stuff. And then our School for the Complex Adaptive Systems. Right now we have a certificate in biomimicry, looking towards nature for use-inspired solutions. We're going to be building out more curriculum there in the coming years, which is going to be a lot of fun. Enough about that. We're going to get to the main event, right? Our incredible expert for the evening, Mr. Garrett Wong, who is not only an alumnus from the school in 2016, he is now working deeply in the sports and sustainability field. He is the member service manager for the Green Sports Alliance. Now, a little bit of fun and background, I'll let him do this. We'll jump into it. But Garrett, awesome to have you, my friend.
You betcha. Happy to be here, Colin, and thanks for everyone for tuning in.
Awesome. So, hey, Garrett, how about let's just press the ball over to you here. Maybe a little bit of a background. What's your genesis story? First off, where are you from? Why ASU? What was your experience here? And then maybe let's talk about some of these ridiculous pictures that we've got up about you.
You betcha, Colin. As you mentioned earlier, I'm from the Bay Area, primarily Sunnyvale, Cupertino, down near San Jose and Redwood City. All the fun places to be when you're into tech, but that wasn't my shtick. And so I really knew that sustainability was a strong focus of mine. In high school, we had put together a city ordinance and mandate in place where our high school students came to the city government and the council and proposed the idea of banning expanded polystyrene across all city restaurants. And come to find out, halfway through my freshman year, I got a phone call from my environmental science teacher back at Homestead High School. And they said, Garrett, it passed. I was like, passed what? Your kidney stone? And he was like, no, the ordinance, we got it passed. It's going to be mandated. And by the time you come back next year, Christmas time, expanded polystyrene won't exist in the city of Cupertino. And that was such a cool impact that I knew I wanted more of. I wanted to see these community impacts based in sustainable and environmental impact. And that's what drove me over to ASU. I was able to complete my Bachelor of Science from the School of Sustainability in 4 years. Had an incredible time doing it, and one of the fortunate ones to say that, I get to do what I love for a living, both in my passion, as most of us do, for sports, and also for making our planet and communities more sustainable in every way.
Awesome, Garrett. Great background. So maybe a little bit more context and color here about your time at ASU in now the College of Global Futures, right? So even when Garrett left, like the college has leveled up. We're having more value and appreciating the value of his degree. Walk us through some of the things that I think were maybe transformational and catalytic, because you didn't always start in the sport sustainability field. Like that wasn't always a thing while you were even here, was it? Give us some of that personal genesis here, and then how did you skate into this ice?
For sure, Colin. And I mean, to see the growth that the colleges and the school have been able to do, even since I left in 2016, has been tremendous. When I was there weren't as many options. I took the one that was most in line with what I wanted to do, and that was to follow the Bachelor's of Science track, follow the energy, materials, and technology route, because that aligned with a lot of my passions around renewable energy, how that impacts our cities, how that impacts business. And that's how I got intertwined in things like marketing and corporate business and corporate social responsibility and all these other pieces. But it wasn't until actually we started really branching out, both within the student ambassador program within the school and also with my capstone work that I've actually done with Professor Tatro, was when I started to see the interconnectivity between sports as a business and entertainment industry and sustainability. It was a facet that a lot of them at the time were not only starting to see from a philanthropic lens, but starting to see as a driver and a catalyst for their business. And so in the pictures here, you see our student ambassador group actually over at CenturyLink Field. to Kevin's dismay, tour the spot where his Packers had some unquestionable calls here and there. Take that what you will. But it was an opportunity for us to see, what sustainability looks like in a stadium, how you message that to your fans, how that impacts your partnerships, your sponsorships, the community that comes in to your venue, and how you're able to utilize that platform for something much greater. And through the capstone work that we had done with Professor Tatro my senior year, something that is actually required of all students, as he mentioned, I jumped into the capstone that had just started that semester, and it was focalized around the Final Four Sustainability Committee. That was not tried and true. It was something new. And the Final Four tournament was landing in Phoenix in 2017. This was fall of 2015 at the time. And we came together as a student group, both made up of master's students and senior undergrad students. And we said, what does the sustainability committee look like? What is its purpose? What is its function? How does it intertwine with the other committees of the hosts? And what goals would you set? What actions would you create? What partners would you work with? And as we created that process, presented it to members of Sun Devil Athletics, which then transitioned into the host committee. And as Colin was then set as the chair of that committee, donned myself as the chief of staff and as gracious as I can be in taking that role. And it was a wild ride. We were able to put on a fantastic event, one where we were able to leave a positive, sustainable legacy within the city and within the Phoenix metro area. And that's where you get to have a little bit of a party at the end with some good friends and colleagues on the right-hand side of the screen over at Hans Park in downtown Phoenix. Can't remember if that one was the Aerosmith concert or the Chainsmokers concert, but it was a fun time, and really just being able to drive the sustainability message to all of the fans that came in from Gonzaga, Oregon, North Carolina, and even folks from the Phoenix area to say, this is the impact that you can make for this city and for its community. And here's how we can make this collective environmental and social impact a strong one, not just for this tournament, but for all of the others that are to follow.
Right. I mean, this is fun, Gary. I mean, this is for everyone here. What you're seeing here on the far right-hand screen, that's me. There's Garrett. This is a guy, the gentleman is again Scott Jenkins, who really is highly regarded as one of the godfathers of having started sustainable sports. So having, in addition to do things like building out the entire Seattle Mariners program and stadium work, he was then over at Mercedes-Benz. And, Scott's kind of doing some other transitions and work right now. Isn't that right, Garrett?
Absolutely. As the chair of our Green Sports Alliance board, he's always engaged with things like the U.S. Green Building Council, the Coliseum Sport Group, and his impact lies far beyond the reaches of just the stadiums as well. His impact, as I mentioned, in green building is fantastic, as he's been able to help write a lot of the codes and practices, but especially, for the region down in Atlanta and really being able to build that stadium from the ground up and creating the incredible fan base around Atlanta United and everything that comes with it. I mean, it's been such a honor and joy to be able to work alongside such incredible people like Scott, like Sarah in the photo, who works for the Bonneville Environmental Foundation and doing carbon, electricity, and water credits for organizations and sport teams. All of it is just so incredible to see the impact that we can make on these communities.
I like that. So maybe let's stay on the Final Four quickly here for a second. So Sarah, right there in this picture for everyone, working for Bonneville Environmental Foundation, is really one of the major NGOs and also the Business for Water Stewardship of bringing brands together in order to create change. So maybe now pivot from Sarah in that connection back. Maybe walk us through what's this picture that we're seeing here in the center of the screen, Garrett, and why is that important through a lens of sport compared to say so we did some recycling stuff at the Final Four, but what's this thing that we're seeing here with you, Sarah, in the center picture?
Absolutely. This was something that our committee, even during our capstone, had mentioned that, you can put recycling cans and all these pieces out on the concourse. That's all fine and dandy, but shouldn't be the purpose of a sustainability committee. That shouldn't be a goal to reach for. In my head, goals and missions are always fun to strive for, but they always continuously get broader and larger, and you're always striving for something more. That's what's so exciting about this industry, is that you're always working, you're always striving for more success than you can take. And it's really exciting to see that we can execute on this. So in that center picture, it's a group of us based in volunteers from different corporate partners and from the committee going out to the eastern side of the state, at least in the metro region, and saying, hey, we're going to take all of our collective energy and the volunteerism of this group, and we're going to go out and do more of a restoration project. This is where we wanted to leave a positive legacy within the region after the tournament leaves. This was weeks after the tournament had wrapped up in early April. And we were able to go in, take out invasive species from the river basin and say, this is more than just a one-day project. This is something that isn't just going to be a destination vacation for folks to see their sports team. 75% of those fans went home disappointed. Only 25% went home happy with their victory. But it was an opportunity for us to showcase, we can make sports a regenerative conversation, not just a sustainable one, but where you can bring in a sports team, an impact and a footprint, and actually elevate a community from its inclusion. So that was a really exciting project for us to lead and be a part of. And it's hats off to partners like the Bonneville Environmental Foundation, other partners within the city of Phoenix, and so many others that we could pull in, even on the corporate sponsorship side from LG and others, to say, hey, this is how we're going to create this legacy and really drive it. And also being able to, Colin, to your point, snowball this into other cities across the country, like Atlanta, like Indianapolis, and others that will be hosting this tournament down the road.
So, a little hat tip to Garrett. So Garrett was my chief of staff for this when I had the pleasure of serving. So it wasn't without him. This event that was held here in 2017, we attained what's called Evergreen certification from what's called the Council for Responsible Sport. So when we received that, it was the highest environmental certification for what's called a jewel level event, World Series, Super Bowl, you name it, in the history of sport. It happened here in Phoenix. And if it wasn't for Garrett's quarterbacking of the details on that, my spastic mind, we've never been able to achieve that. So Garrett, let's keep going. I like what you mentioned. So there's two things you even talked about: the business, right? And you talked about this legacy. So I think there's a lot of areas that we can dig into here. Garrett, can you maybe first talk us through, most folks may not understand, what is the value pitch of sustainability through business? Like, well, doesn't recycling cost more? So like, it's nice, but like, who really cares? Why should the business of sport fundamentally care about not just the environment, but other stuff as well?
Absolutely. And you think about at its core, what is sports? It's an entertainment industry. It's the same as a Disney. It's the same as an ESPN. And all of these intertwining focal points are people. It's a brand that's, its product is entertainment, and its crowd need to be, enticed into that product. And so as they're trying to continue to evolve what this sport is, both through on the field and off the field contributions, you want to make sure that your brand is always elevating, continuously growing, and reaching more audiences than you were yesterday, because that model isn't going to sustain itself if you're just continuously marketing to the same individuals. And so how do you engage folks in marginalized communities? How do you engage people of color that may not be interested in your sport? How do you engage other, youth from, even regions outside of your ballpark and outside of your immediate community, to have a brand like the Yankees, like Real Madrid and others that have international and global recognition? And so with that comes sustainability. It's an opportunity for you to showcase this is the invested value that these teams and organizations and players see in wanting to drive and promote sport in a way that's healthy and sustainable for these communities, and really focalizes on something that we do at the Green Sports Alliance. It's being able to leverage that cultural and market influence that sport can have on people and promote sustainable communities through that process where we live and play. And so as a business, you see that as driving value, which can drive revenue and drive sponsorship, drive viewership, drive your fan base, and eventually, and ultimately drive business. And so as so many teams have been able to drive along this, Sun Devil Athletics being one of them, of course, in the previous examples of the Final Four and the Seattle Mariners, Seahawks, and now the Seattle Kraken talking about Climate Pledge Arena. I mean, you're talking about a global organization like Amazon saying that sustainability is so important. We don't want our name brand of an organization as the naming rights for this arena in a city that is a huge market for sport. We want this to follow the ethos of our fan base and drive that for folks across the sports industry to say, this is not just something different for sports naming rights deals. This is something transcending for the sports industry. And we're seeing that continuously through Forest Green Rovers and so many others across the industry saying that this isn't just a moment for us, but this is a movement that we want to carry on. across the foreseeable future.
So I think that that's a great point right there. I think that I'd like you to maybe riff a little bit further on the moment versus movement. So things like a Washington football team, right, has kind of had a interesting conversation at the intersection of corporate naming rights, their brand, and that's a pointed moment. Maybe you could comment on that, but then also provide, I think, some context and character, because some folks may find that right agreeable, some folks may have concern about that or disagree with it. So maybe talk about that pointedly about why that's happened now, but then could you maybe help us frame what role has sport had? Because we talk about sustainability not just in an eco sense, right, but justice and equity. What
Yeah,
role has sport had historically in ushering these types of conversations?
absolutely. To your first point, Colin, I mean, you see the sports organizations like a Washington football club that say, you know what, this name, the name that we tack on to our team for decades and decades hasn't been an issue for us. It hasn't been an issue to our organization and our business. So we're going to remain this status quo and we're going to continue going along as what they could see as business as usual. But in the sense too of sustainability driving business, sustainability could also take away that business. And when you see an organization that puts in a financial investment to a team as much as an organization like FedEx does for the Washington Football Club, when they come to the table with the ownership and executive team of the football team over in DC and they say, you know what, we're not comfortable with our name tacked along to this brand. If you don't change this, we won't be your naming rights deal for the stadium much longer. And that's where you see the quick turnaround of everyone going back on their word and saying, oh no, this is something that we're going to change and fix and we're working through the process. And that's the power that sport and business can have intertwined with each other. It's an incredible, push for FedEx to really emphasize that against the Washington football team. And then you can stay the same for folks like the Seattle Kraken and seeing a Climate Pledge Arena saying, hey, this is not just the focus for the stadium and the arena itself, but we want this to now be an emphasis for certification of this building being net zero. We want this building to not just baseline a neutral status of electricity, water, and waste usage, but we want to also, make sure that we're regenerative in the sense that we can build up the Seattle community through sport. And like you said, Colin, this isn't the first time this is happening on a social justice front in a conversation that we've seen very prominently in 2020 amidst the COVID pandemic. We're also seeing the social justice conversation really coming to the forefront, more so than it did a couple of years back with the Colin Kaepernick instance. And so when you talk about this being a movement, not a moment, you look back at the Jesse Owens, the Jackie Robinsons, the Muhammad Alis of the world, the Billie Jean Kings, and you say, wow, these are innovators in the space that aren't just changing sport, but changing society as a whole. And so now you're seeing athletes, coaches, owners, all creating this culture of inclusion and equity across sport and trying to invigorate that across our communities. One project that we've been gracious enough to work on and see from a lot of our GSA members is that they've been working with quite a few different nonprofits across the space in opening up their arenas and stadiums to act as early voting polling centers during these election times. And you see that with areas like the Chase Center in San Francisco. You're seeing this with the State Farm Arena in Atlanta. And these are areas that, primarily have been the equivalent of a food desert for voting in these inner city areas. And so being able to provide that for so many community members that can then tie this back to, wow, this sports team and this sports organization see the value in our community being equitable and to be fans of this team. Those types of business drawing opportunities are things that we're really excited to see within the sport industry here.
I think that history is important. Going back to like Roman times, right? Competitiveness. There's often a phrase for those of us joining, things happen in society either in sports or the courts, right? Not courts like basketball, like as in like the judicial system. So we can talk about things like the 1968 Mexico Olympics coming hot off of the presses, right, of the civil rights movements. Tommy Smith and John Carlos with a fist raised high on the podium there at the 68 Olympics, talking about the Olympic Human Rights Project. stuff coming out from the Sacramento area, from academics, things like justice and equity, things like even as of late, the women's national soccer team, talking about pay equity and gender. So sport has often been, some people really enjoy it, some people don't, but I think what Garrett's articulating here is this narrow end of the wedge, right? That sport is always at the forefront of society. And whether we love it or not, it is always there. And it's a fascinating field to explore and expand upon. Garrett, I like maybe let's turn a little bit more now towards some current events, right? So y'all just had a big deal transact in the last couple of weeks called the Green Sports Alliance Annual Summit. This is a bonanza of incredible things, bringing kind of a global and national sports sustainability folks together. One, could you maybe help us understand what the heck is Green Sports Alliance? Why is that awesome? And take us through this amazing summit that you guys just recently had, and maybe some of your favorite highlights from it.
Absolutely, Colin. I mean, our mission here at the GSA is to leverage, again, that cultural and market influence that sports brings to promote these healthy communities and sustainable communities where we work, live, and play. And in something like our marquee event in the Green Sports Alliance Summit, it's something that primarily we've had the amazing opportunity to host this thing in some really incredible stadiums. I mean, from the arena over in Sacramento and the Golden One Center, all the way down to Scott's facility over in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and this last year in Philadelphia with the Eagles. Unfortunately, this year taking a little bit of a drastic turn for us, and we had to shift this thing to virtual. We were set to be in Minneapolis at US Bank Stadium, and we were really excited to host it there with so many leaders like the Twins and the Vikings and the University of Minnesota, row the boat, to be able to, tack on some of that leadership. We had to shift this thing to virtual, but said, how do we continue to drive some of these conversations, even in a way that we can still engage in a virtual setting? And so what we did was we put on this, 2-day event on the 13th and 14th of October. And we said, all right, let's go back and recognize the past and the history of the past decade, and recognize what sports sustainability has been and what the future of it could look like. And so when we talk about the past, we talk about, being able to come into our stadiums and make them as sustainable as possible in our operations, how you message that to fans and how you get players engaged. But now in the future, it's talking about, all right, now we start bringing in these conversations of social and environmental justice. How do we bring in the likes of a Gary Gilliam, who's a former NFL athlete, being able to create these eco-villages and sustain in unsustainable areas previously within the Philly area, and say, hey, this is how we're going to create these communities of sustainable inclusion and opportunity in areas that were food deserts, that didn't have accessibility to clean water. And how can we build out this conversation through the power of sports? I mean, Colin, you were emceeing and moderating during the event, and you had the opportunity to moderate a session on talking about global sport leadership, even as we build back better in a pandemic. How do you talk about, what the Olympics are planning, what FIFA are planning, and even what our clubs in the Cleveland Indians and others have in store for us? All of these conversations were so fantastic to have. My personal favorite was actually on day one, and it was talking with some of our professional athletes about how they can leverage their voice for impactful change. And so we brought in the likes of Renee Montgomery, a WNBA champion, Brent Suter and Nelson Cruz, both Major League Baseball stars right now, and also Forrest Shearer, who is a Cliff Bar athlete and a representative from Protect Our Winters, really talking about, why athletes are so passionate about this stuff, their environmental activism, their social justice activism, and how they see players, fans, coaches, and organizations really drawing together to leverage this impact that we can all create. And so these conversations of sustainable venues, social justice, and opportunities for partnership as well are so fun for us to have with our GSA members and the broader public as well.
Remember, we started this when my shameless pitch about things like transdisciplinarity, the complexity, the futures orientation, having cogent work experience, right? So Garrett is not doing like recycling programs for a stadium, right? He is leading a transformative body of members, the world's biggest brands. Here's a fun fact. All of the top 10 sport leagues globally, their annual turnover is about the same as one company, Intel. But does anyone here name their children after the Intel Pentium chip? or a computer chip or a graphics card? The answer to that is negative. We name our children after like players from the Oakland, now Las Vegas Raiders. That's just totally bananas, right? Garrett is leading an incredibly complex, sensitive, and yet transformative body of work. And he studied sustainability. This is not just eco stuff that he's doing. It's gone, yes, incorporates a lot of that, as you heard from the stadium and the ops space, but this perspective of justice, equity, brand management. So Garrett, what are to you some of these kind of key takeaways, kind of quoting Wayne Gretzky here, where the puck's headed? Where do you see the role of sport, sustainability, innovation? How is sport leading this to you? What gets you really excited for like the next 6 months and maybe even the next 10 years? What's sport gonna do, and how can Gavin, Hal, and Jack have a role to play in that?
Absolutely. I mean, for folks that are interested in this space, it's so exciting to see the trajectory. I mean, 10 years ago, we're talking about, oh, let's have, a zero waste program. Let's put out some bins and see what folks do about it. Right now, we're just getting to that cusp of everyone in sport now. LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and all of these high profile players are bringing it to the forefront and saying, hey, we're going to not just talk about why it's impactful for all of these social justice conversations to have a front page, but also how do we use our voice and our platform and our dollars to back that? And so now as we start looking at the future of what sport and sustainability looks like, right now what we're talking about is how sport can be environmentally and socially sustainable. But where we want to take this is where sport can be regenerative in a sense that we uplift our communities, again, leave this impact of legacy positively across not just these marquee events like the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Final Four, and so many others, but also how we can create that for local communities within their youth sports complexes, their minor league teams, their professional sports teams, and their university athletic programs. And so that's something we're really excited to look at from an environmental sustainability perspective in things like diversity, equity, and gender inclusion, and also the social justice conversations as well that we're building out here with the Green Sports Alliance. And the trajectory is, uncapped and so much untapped potential there for us to continue exploring and building upon what we've grown here.
So, I mean, even some of the panels we had, like the IOC at the table, things like that. How do we talk about sport as a transformative body from, say, like a nation state in a peacekeeping basis? What? I mean, this is heady stuff going through this sort of thing, right?
And to jump in here too, Colin, really quickly, actually a paper that I had written back in my sophomore year at the School of Sustainability was a review at the time of the 2014 Sochi Olympics. For those that are on social media back in 2014, it had some incredible negative impacts on the region, on just how it impacted the image of the IOC. And that was really a turning point for them to then turn around and say, how are we going to not just create a committee and say we're going to tack on these goals, but to your point, Colin, being able to build this out and create a positive legacy and impact for whichever location they lean to next. And so to have the IOC, to have FIFA and the World Cup Qatar Foundation be a part of these conversations within our GSA Summit was really incredible.
Right. So guys, we've covered a lot of territory. You've got a global expert, right? Garrett Wong here is leading this stuff. I mean, really, if there's a member or a player, like he does play one-on-one every now and then with LeBron James, but then LeBron's like, man, I can't keep up. Please stop schooling me, right? So you've got Garrett here. What are some things that you guys want to ask, or questions, or big picture stuff that's in your brain about sports and even sustainability? Garrett, if you're looking and maybe offering some advice to these hopefully future change agents who are going to be joining us, wanting to get involved in this space, could you talk maybe a bit about your orientations of the college overall and how that prepared you, and how you think it could prepare them, and how they should maybe be involved and help bird dog some of this out?
No, absolutely. And for the three individuals that are, joining us today, if sport isn't your shtick, that's totally cool. Like if you're coming in with this open mind of, I just want to learn and I want to create an education based on my passions and my interests, honestly, ASU is the spot where you want to do it, because I didn't know where I wanted to end up after my 4 years of undergrad. I didn't know that sports sustainability was going to be the thing, but I knew that coming in, I was going to work off and I was going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get out of this 4-year program with as much as I can. I'm going to study abroad. I'm going to join as many extracurricular activities as my schedule will allow. I'm going to work part-time, take up internships, and still come out of this thing with an education that I'm really proud to be a part of. And I think everybody can have that within the school and within the college. So many of my colleagues found their internal passions for public policy, for law, for corporate business, and many others through the same program that we went through. And I think as long as you come in with that same passion and drive, I feel that the school and the college are able to really supply that for all of us, given the curriculum and the setup that they've created through the internships, capstones, and the coursework that you're prepared for.
Coming from Gavin here, Garrett, so what type of sports internships are available at ASU? Maybe you could talk to some of that. I know you were involved in that from a variety of different angles.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, during my time, I was involved in a couple of different projects. Of course, being very close to the spring training facilities in Arizona is a great perk. And while I wasn't able to be a part of Colin's next cohort for that project, students were actually able to be a part of different zero waste audits and sustainability practices for some of the spring training teams within the Valley. And I think that was a really cool opportunity that I would have loved to have, but wasn't necessarily something that was in the cards for me given the timing. But one of the pieces that I was able to be a part of was the rebuilding and revamping of Sun Devil Stadium. I joined a committee then called the SDS 365 Committee, now the Sun Devil Stadium Community Union. And they looked at this remodel of a football stadium and said, you know, we're not using this as much as we think we are. I mean, really, it's an office space, a really empty one at that, for 50, maybe 100 individuals and a couple of student athletes here in their off seasons. But for the bulk of it, we really don't fill up that thing except for maybe, 7 or 8 home games plus a graduation in the winter and a graduation in the spring. So how do we utilize this untapped potential of this building in a sustainable manner and one that can drive more community impact, drive revenue, drive events, drive community engagement? Again, sport being this catalyst and sustainability being this catalyst for sport. And so we took it upon ourselves to put together a roadmap of, as we're building this stadium, what do we want it to look like? What do we want it to function as? How can we have classes conducted within this stadium? How can we have lab spaces allocated in here? How can we have nonprofits have office spaces in here? And for all of these examples, it was, really cool to be able to build that out for events, for other opportunities for students to be engaged during a weekly basis. And I mean, just recently, I guess maybe not as recently, earlier this year, USA Triathlon hosted a conference in Sun Devil Stadium, similarly to how we host our events with the Green Sports Alliance in professional sports stadiums and arenas. And to see that complex fully refurbished and renovated and really living and breathing, not just as a sports stadium, but as a fully occupied building, was really cool to witness when we came back here in the early part of 2020.
So I'll comment a little bit there for you as well. So Garrett mentioned spring training. So I had the pleasure of working with a couple of students. We worked with the D-backs for a year. We worked with the A's for a year. And then we were scheduled, and then the world went back in the handbasket, to work with the Cubs this spring training, of helping them not just only do zero waste work and audits, but engaging nearly over 300,000 fans that tend to go through their turnstiles each season from spring training. Garrett mentioned a couple of things as well. So triathlon. In the School of Sustainability and the College of Global Futures, we've run collaborations actually with USA Triathlon for multiple years. So USAT and ASU have a very strong partnership. In fact, the CEO of USA Triathlon used to be the chief of staff of Sun Devil Athletics. His name is Rocky, a good friend of mine. Cares actually a lot about sustainability. In addition to helping take their national championships for collegiate, which are hosted at ASU, by the way. Sidebar, we have the nation's best women's triathlon team, literally the best, and they carry a 3.92 GPA, if you can't believe it. Amazing. They've hosted it here. They ran that from a sustainability perspective. We've also had students in our graduate school cohort, mind you, that actually did an entire culminating project. In lieu of their thesis, they did a strategic project with USA Triathlon, building out a comprehensive sustainability portfolio for them, not just from an environmental base, but a brand and revenue generating organization in strategy as well. So lots of opportunity there. Great question. I really like that. Who's got another one for Garrett?
And thanks for that question too. Happy to chat about anything about 4 years there, whether it was on-campus living or extracurricular groups that I was a part of, and even more on what we're doing here, post-graduation here with the Green Sports Alliance. Is there anything that you've got, or Colin, if you got other questions too?
We're coming up here on about 3/4 to the hour, so maybe we'll start to cap it off. Why do you do this work, right? So we think, why sustainability and sport? What about this? I mean, you're a fan, you're a sport nutter, right? I know you're a super fan for it. You have a voluminous knowledge. When you were in class and we worked together, I may have known a little bit on sustainability, but Garrett here was to blow me away of knowing who played third base for the Bo Sox in 1987 and had 2 home runs, because there's probably 2 third basemen. Why do you do this, Garrett?
As much as you applaud me for my sports trivia skills, I wouldn't say that's the main reason for this, although it is cool to, meet all the big wigs within the sports industry and whatnot. I mean, what it really boils down to is seeing the amount of impact that these organizations can make across their cities, across their fans, and to see that firsthand very significantly, really, with the Final Four. I mean, that was such an amazing opportunity to be able to see truly what a marquee event like the Final Four could do for the Phoenix metro area. When I was also a student, I was lucky enough to be a part of 2 different volunteer groups for the Super Bowl in 2015, when it was over at University of Phoenix Stadium at the time, now State Farm Stadium, and also the college football championship. And to see the impact that the sustainability programs could make on these fans, on the community, were so impactful to me. And I think sport has such again, untapped potential for being able to drive communities in a positive manner. And when you have athletes and coaches and teams that feel the same way and utilizing their platform for more than just a game, it's really cool to see what all of these folks believe in, what they come up with, and how we can really create incredible communities together through sport.
And this is born out of a degree for wanting to create change. The platform of sport, the opportunity, and there's no better place than the College of Global Futures. So Garrett, I want to thank you deeply for spending some time with us this evening. I think it's been wonderful. For the folks joining us here now and into the future, here's our contact information. Myself, Colin, my esteemed colleague Bridget, who's been here with us on the chat as well. You can feel free to reach out to us at any time. We welcome the opportunity to do that.
Well, I don't think so, but thank you for your time.
Absolutely. We're so thankful to have you here, and you can always feel free to reach out to us. Garrett's available on the GSA website. This is important and impactful stuff, and we're so thankful for you joining us. And I hope you all have a great night, and thanks for joining the College of Global Futures. Take care.
Thanks, you too.